In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan, Frye, John Flack, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Hello, all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. And today, I'm excited because we have my favorite co-host, Bryan, Frye. Bryan, how are you?
Good evening, everybody. I'm doing well.
Another reason I'm excited, Bryan, you know what? We brought back DJ Bryant from the Blue Velvet episode, our number 2 most downloaded episode. I have a feeling our popularity is about to go through the roof on this one. DJ, how are you?
I'm doing well. I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I certainly feel a whole lot yummier now.
Good Batman Returns reference.
Welcome back.
DJ, we got to know you a little bit last time, but we got to get to know you a little bit better here. You ready to answer some hard-hitting questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Hit hard.
If it's, don't worry, we'll redact them. If
we might have to.
Yeah, yes.
I've got some Russia things to talk about.
Nah.
Okay, what's your favorite death scene in a movie?
Ooh, so most recently I saw Ghost Ship, which is 2002, and there's an opening scene at a dance party where someone has rigged the cable system to slice through a bunch of people as they dance. And so like you see the setup for it, the cable, kind of the tension builds, and then like it cuts across the audience. And there's like these 5 minutes of silence where people are just standing there like, what happened? And then they slide apart.
Is this like a Final Destination kind of thing, like where the deaths are over the top? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, favorite movie, wizard or witch?
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I had a hard time with this one. I would go Dumbledore, though. But he'll bend the rules a little bit. Bryan, how about you? Do you have a favorite wizard or witch?
Favorite wizard of all time? I don't know. I feel like if we go full circle, it's got to be Gandalf, right?
That'd be a reasonable choice, yeah. So, DJ, what movie did you watch, even though your parents probably didn't want you to see it yet?
Boogie Nights, because of Mark Wahlberg's penis, which was actually a prosthetic device.
I didn't know that.
Was it obvious that it was?
Yeah.
Disappointing, I guess.
I know, so sad. But there was a lot of sex and nudity, so...
What age were you when you did that?
Oh, God. I was definitely an adolescent.
Okay.
And this was when HBO was a thing, and you secretly watched it in your bedroom with the doors locked.
Showgirls was that movie.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, that makes sense. I think mine's going to be for more violence reasons. I watched the movie Halloween, not for nudity reasons, but just because for violence. So, a little bit more, I guess, a little more innocent. I don't know. We're a little more bloodthirsty.
A little more bloodthirsty, yeah.
Anyway, so what's the last movie you saw, DJ?
The last movie I actually saw was Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, specifically her series where she does the commentary for films. And 2 in particular was Demonic Toys and Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. Wow. And so, I don't know if you knew this or not, but she came to the Steel City Con not too long ago. I didn't get to meet her, though.
Okay, yeah. That's for people who don't know, DJ and I are in Pittsburgh here. We used to be coworkers together, still friends. And Steel City Con is like, would you say it is a B-rate, C-rate, or D-rate Comic-Con?
I'm going to go B at least, but it's probably a C.
It's probably a C. They'll be like, we've got Eddie from the Munsters. Hey, remember him? Or that guy from Star Trek?
We have Spokon out here, and it's definitely probably CD rated.
CD. For cassette disc.
I've not been, but one of these days I'll at least have to attempt to people watch.
Give me an example of who attends the Spokon.
I can't even give you an example. I'm aware of it because people come in for graphic novels and comic books to the store to take to it to get signed by people I've never heard of. You know, it is what it is.
Okay, yeah.
At least we have one, right?
Absolutely. So Steel City Con or Spokon. Maybe someday Retro Movie Roundtable will be big news and have our own booth at the Steel City Con. Today, though, what movie are we going to do, DJ?
We're going to do Death Becomes Her.
Which is a fun title. Death Becomes Her comes out in 1992. It grosses $58.4 million, placing it 24th on the box office on the year. It comes behind the movie House Sitter, which I believe is also a Goldie Hawn movie. It's another comedy. And also coming ahead of Unlawful Entry at 25th. If you're wondering what the number one movie that year was, it was Aladdin from Disney. And IMDb does not necessarily think a lot of Death Becomes Her. It only gives it a 6.5. And Rotten Tomatoes, even crueler. The critics give it a 52% and the audience gives it a 61%. DJ, is this fair?
It is not fair. This is a great film, and they should show some more love.
Hey, but don't worry. The awards came to its side, and it is an Oscar winner. It won for Best Visual Effects, and it was a Golden Globe nominee for Best Actress, Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy for Meryl Streep. And it was a BAFTA winner for all of our British listeners out there. It won for Best Visual Effects as well. So got some hardware, and it made some pretty good money at the box office. That's not a bad showing.
Decent, so, yeah.
Yeah. Let's get a little feel for whether you've seen this movie before and your expectations and background. Bryan, why don't you come first here? Have you seen this movie before? And if so, what were your expectations coming in?
I had seen this movie before. I'm certain it was something my aunt and or mother was watching at some point in my childhood. I remember her getting shot in the stomach. I remember it being vaguely funny. Actually, on second watch, it wasn't as funny as I remembered it, but I'm almost certain I wouldn't have gotten any of the jokes when I watched it the last time. So I don't know if it was just because other people were laughing or what, but I guess the best thing to say is instead of saying I've seen it, I have vague impressions before watching it again.
DJ, what about you? Have you seen this movie before? If so, what were your experiences and what was it like coming back to it now?
I have definitely seen this movie before, probably too many times. I love it as much now as much as I did then, and I appreciate it even more so now knowing that it was Robert Zemeckis who did this, who also did some of my other favorite movies growing up, which we can probably dive into a bit later.
I'll also say this. When I mentioned I had to watch this to Jess, she was like, oh my God, I love that movie. And she was like, we're going to watch it right now. So clearly she had seen it before, way more recently than me, because she was far more familiar with it.
Okay. She's a keeper. I like her.
Yep, I agree.
They've been together for almost as long as I've known them. So
okay.
Yeah. High school sweethearts. For me, I had never seen this movie before, and I wasn't even sure what to think of the title. And honestly, with Meryl Streep being in it, I was thinking we're going into a much more serious movie just because it is Meryl Streep. And somehow I didn't even recognize Bruce Willis with the mustache on the cover of the box. And I may have judged this incorrectly off the cover. So I have passed up on it before. And I don't know what my deal was because I came to it and I really enjoyed this movie. I did not know Robert Zemeckis had done this. And now that I've seen it, I just rented it on iTunes. But I think I could likely be picking up a used copy of this at some point. I definitely am a fan of this, and I would show this to other people. It was a lot of fun, is how I would put it.
Well, after I mentioned it and Jess lost her mind, I was like, all right, well, I guess we're buying it. So we just bought it on iTunes on the spot.
Perfect. Hey, iTunes, those are 2 endorsements right there. Give us that Apple money. Those are some endorsements for you.
Plug.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Yeah.
I mean, I bought it on iTunes on my MacBook, which also works on my Apple television.
And your iPhone. Did you hear that, Tim Cook? He's listening. He's a big fan. So if you haven't already seen Death Becomes Her, please do go back and watch it, then come back and enjoy the rest of this podcast. We'll be back after these messages.
President Donald J. Trump here from the White House. You know, America, we don't win anymore. Our podcasts are going overseas to India. They're leaving across the border to Mexico. They're going to China. It's very sad to see, really. America, I win at everything I do. And if you want to win too, you got to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and get Retro Movie Roundtable, an amazing, luxurious 5-star review, and comment. Tell them how to make the show better, and they too will win like I do. That's not all. We're going to win by going to like the show on Facebook, and Facebook is going to pay for it, believe me. Also, email the show at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Do this and we will bring great podcasts back to America, like my favorite podcast, the Retro Movie Roundtable. Soon you will see we are winning again, and you are going to win so much you're going to get tired of winning. We're going to win more than Charlie Sheen. Believe me, I know Charlie. He's a very reasonable man and a very good friend of mine.
This message was endorsed by President Donald Trump.
Welcome back, and once again, we're going to get into spoiling Death Becomes Her. First, let's refresh your memory. If you haven't seen Death Becomes Her lately, we're going to come to your rescue. And DJ, you want to tell people what happens in Death Becomes Her?
Definitely. So Death Becomes Her is an American black comedy fantasy film and cult classic, directed by Robert Zemeckis and written by David Klopp and Martin Donovan. The film is centered around two very strong female leads, Madeline Ashton, played by Meryl Streep, and Helen Sharp, played by Goldie Hawn. Their nicknames for each other are Mad and Hell, and trust me, they are both mad as hell towards one another. The film opens in 1978 in New York City on Broadway on the production of Tennessee Williams' Sweet Bird of Youth, which is a story about a faded movie star. Hello, foreshadowing. Madeline Ashton is the star of this production, and it is clear from the beginning that she is a diva and doesn't take two spits from anyone else. Helen Sharp has brought her fiancé, a plastic surgeon, Dr. Ernest Menville, played by Bruce Willis, to the play so that he can meet Madeline and so that Helen can see if Ernest can pass what she calls the Madeline Ashton test. We are told that Helen has lost men in the past to Madeline, and she is determined to see if Ernest will take the bait. Ernest and Madeline meet backstage, and they hit it off very quickly, openly flirting in front of Helen. Ernest is taken by Madeline, and the two wed shortly thereafter. Flash forward 7 years to 1985, and Helen has become a cat-obsessed social recluse who has gained a significant amount of weight and has become fixated on Madeline since she stole Ernest from her. Helen is shortly thereafter committed to a psychiatric hospital. Flash forward another 7 years to 1992, and Madeline and Ernest are living in Beverly Hills, and they are both miserable with their lives together. Ernest has become an alcoholic and has abandoned his previous career as a plastic surgeon and is now working as a reconstructive mortician, and Madeline has become noticeably older and her acting career has all dried up. After receiving an invitation to Helen's book party, Madeline rushes out to her beauty spa to receive a plasma transfusion so that she can look her best around Helen. While at the spa, Madeline is told that there is little that the spa people can do for her, given her age, and that she is given the contact information for Leslie von Rumen, who specializes in youth rejuvenation. Madeline takes a card and rips it up, thinking it's just a fraud of some sort. Madeline and Ernest attend Helen's book party and are astounded to find that not only has Helen lost a significant amount of weight, but she is noticeably younger for a 50-year-old woman, and she is drop-dead gorgeous. After the party, Madeline rushes to her younger lover's house, only to find that he has a woman his own age and is done seeing Madeline. Tortured by all these developments, Madeline decides to visit Leslie von Rumen, and she ingests a magical elixir which brings back her beauty and her youthful essence. Meanwhile, Helen seduces Ernest and begins convincing him that they should kill Madeline and stage her death to look like a drunk driving accident. The two contrive an elaborate plan to accomplish their goal, but things go awry when Ernest loses his temper and kills Madeline by pushing her down the stairs. Upon this, Ernest immediately calls Helen to inform her what happened and asks her to come over immediately to help dispose of the body. While Ernest is still on the phone with Helen, we observe Madeline's corpse in the background as it becomes reanimated. Ernest is freaked out by this development and immediately rushes Madeline to the emergency room, where they are informed that she is technically dead, but is somehow defying all natural laws. Ernest brings Madeline back home, where he begins restoring her with his mortician skills, and while in the process, Helen drops by to help dispose of Madeline's body. The scene is now set for an epic standoff between Madeline and Helen and their sadistic form of bitchcraft between one another. Madeline shoots Helen in the stomach, and when Helen's corpse is reanimated, Madeline realizes that Helen has also taken Leslie von Rumen's potion and that Helen's book Forever Young is a crock of shit. Eventually, the two women forgive one another and their past transgressions and begin plotting how they can keep Ernest around forever to keep them put together, basically. Ernest, meanwhile, has decided that he must leave these two women and that he cannot stay around any longer. Madeline and Helen kidnap Ernest and they take him to Leslie's, where they unsuccessfully try to get him to take the potion. 37 years later, in 2029, Madeline and Helen are sitting at Ernest's funeral. And the end.
Well done, well done. Man, that's a good job. This is a silly comedy. There's a proper philosophical point to go with it, though, and I actually liked this. DJ, do you like this movie just because of the fun nature of it, but or do you actually enjoy it also for that, like, Who Wants to Live Forever, and the fact that vanity is kind of an ugly quality which these two characters are kind of obsessed with, and then in the end, particularly as they go into the eulogy scene, like, I thought that's where the movie really drove its point home. Like, my enjoyment of the movie went way up at the end, and it really, it's over the top. So, talk about that, like the content or like the moral behind the story.
Well, so like you mentioned, like, it is a story about the kind of our quest for youth, and kind of in a society where we are confronted with so many images of beauty and what it means to be a man or a woman. This is all about kind of questioning that, as like, if you could live forever, would you really want to do it, or is it going to be a really abysmal experience? As a gay man, this is a very pertinent kind of topic still, because in our community, like, a lot of older gays are shunned. Like, once you get past a certain age, it's like, no one, you're a troll, or you're something less than. Totally, yeah.
Huh.
So, like, you know, I think that's why a lot of gay men love this film, because it is exploring this issue. Furthermore, gay men tend to have, like, body dysmorphia issues, eating disorders, things like that. A lot of things that are traditionally plague women.
Yeah.
And then these two characters are quite hilarious. Like, they're very brashy women. Like, they don't care. Like, they are like dead set on, like, cementing themselves in this life. They're divas. And doing it at all costs, basically.
Literally cement.
Literally, yes.
It's interesting that you say that, because maybe you've perhaps answered my question, because in 2017, Vanity Fair published an article with the 25th anniversary of the film stating that this has become a gay cult classic and a touchstone of the queer community, if I may use that term. And
I'll let you. You can.
but is it... so you're saying that it has to do with the fact that as one gets older, they tend to be pushed out
of the community. Beauty, age. Again, and we love, like, bitchy characters like that. Divas, so to speak. Like, that is one of our favorite kind of qualities. Like a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to get it or go after it.
Wow, so that fills in several gaps, because even I read the article and I couldn't figure it out, and even Isabella Rossellini, who's in this movie,
yes,
and it was also in the last movie that you came in and talked about with Blue Velvet. So the actors are starting to network, starting to connect. I don't know what Isabella Rossellini movie you'll talk about next time, I wonder. But anyway, she was also taken aback by it. Like, she didn't know that this had this status and that it had meant this to so many people. So perhaps this is what's conveyed it to cult status.
And to a previous point, like you mentioned, like, Meryl Streep is typically known for more serious roles. Bruce Willis, around this time, this was before his Die Hard, and that was kind of like what cemented his career. Like, so these are two roles that are kind of outside of their wheelhouse and puts them in a different, like, perspective for viewers to see, and I think they do really great at it.
I may be the stick checker. This was after Die Hard 2.
After. Thank you.
Okay.
So he'd already cemented himself.
I'm just going to be the goalie tonight.
Please.
What about you, Bryan? What do you think about the, I guess, both the meaning behind the story as well as its over-the-top presentation of its brand of humor?
I feel like this is kind of tale as old of time, to just steal some Disney, since we already talked about Aladdin briefly, which I know that's not a line from Aladdin, but Disney. Anyway, you're absolutely right. I mean, the vanity of Hollywood is something that they've brought up in, you know, multitude of movies over time, but this is the first time that they really got power who are out of their elements doing something funny. I loved Bruce Willis in this. This was hilarious to see him in this role. And it's something super different. It's something I don't even want to call it niche-y. The fact that it's a cult classic is a shame that there's only a cult following for it.
Well, I have to say that I trusted Bruce Willis with the comedy because I had seen the whole 9 yards and he's been on Saturday Night Live, and I knew he had that comedic timing. But when he's doing it, he's normally like, I'm still the tough guy, and I'm being put into this funny situation, and maybe I'm the straight guy off of it. Although I do remember he went on Saturday Night Live and had a boy dance party with all the guys of Saturday Night Live. Like, they acted like they were watching football, but as soon as the ladies left, they all started dancing to pop music and stuff like that. And they're like, guys just want to dance with each other, but we can't ever do it. So we have to have a boy dance party in secret. So I knew Bruce Willis could be silly.
I was really interested in where this fell in his career when I was watching this. And this came between two of my favorite movies of his that a lot of people haven't heard of and or watched. He kind of dipped his toe into doing that action comedy a year prior with Last Boy Scout, which I really enjoyed. And immediately after this, he did Striking Distance, which actually happens in Pittsburgh.
It does. Pittsburgh movie.
Which is more your flat out action.
Yeah.
So, and then the year following that is Pulp Fiction. So that kind of gives you an idea of where this happened in Bruce Willis's career. But Die Hard 2 and out.
Look Who's Talking's before, right?
I didn't write that one down. Sorry.
Google will fix this.
But anyway, I wanted to see where he was kind of at in his career when this movie came out, just because I didn't have that deep background in knowing where this movie fell. And to see it came between those two other movies, I was like, that's awesome. Yeah, I think he was stretching his legs a little bit. Die Hard 2 was kind of a miss box office wise, and I think it's pretty widely regarded as the worst of them.
No.
So he was trying something else. So, I can get behind it.
He also did Look Who's Talking in 1989 as well, which is also a comedy. He's the voice of the baby, though.
Sure.
He's the one who is talking, and you should look at it. That's the movie entitled. Anyway, Meryl Streep, though, I have not seen be funny. I saw an attempt of that in Mamma Mia, and I don't think that movie went particularly well. DJ shaking his head and confirming that. And, I just know her from movies like The Deer Hunter or from, heavy movies. And
Heavy, yeah.
So I honestly saw her, and I was like, this probably won't be good for comedy. This doesn't seem like someone who has comic sensibilities. But you know what? She does play that straight character. She plays that. She's intense. She's dislikable, and she just dives right into that. Like, fully commits to it. And it works in a way. And
that opening scene, like where she's like on Broadway doing this song and dance number, I'm flabbergasted every time I see that, because like that's a good amount of choreography and singing, and obviously it's been cut together and Hollywood magic has happened, but
I'd say it went better here than it did in Mamma Mia,
yeah.
That matter. Also, Pierce Brosnan doesn't have to sing. Oof, that was not Pierce's best moment.
No, poor guy.
I wasn't a fan of Mamma Mia. That Mamma Mia.
No. Bryan, why don't you give us a cast rundown?
All right. So we're starting at the very top, as she usually is. Meryl Streep is Madeline Ashton. Bruce Willis is Ernest Menville. Goldie Hawn is Helen Sharp. Isabella Rossellini as Louise von Rumen. Ian Ogilvy as Chegal. Adam Storke is Dakota. Nancy Fish is Rose. And I'll probably just trail off there, because then people stop having names.
I'm going to mention that Ian Ogilvy is the guy with the beauty spa who has that eccentric wink in his face. Yeah, and so just to clarify that if anybody doesn't remember. And uncredited, I definitely have to call it out, Sidney Pollack, who's a famous Oscar-winning director. He did Tootsie and Out of Africa, amongst many other movies. He is a fantastic emergency room doctor in this as well. Worth mentioning, I think. So.
Oh, I remember that.
So, not credited, though, for some reason. I'd never understand why people were uncredited in anything.
It's so we have these conversations where they're like, Sidney Pollack, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like just the easiest reference I can give you right this second is in Deadpool 2 as Brad Pitt as the Invisible Man.
Yeah. I didn't catch that until afterwards. People had to point that out to me as well. But
if you blink, you miss it. But
so it's actually interesting that DJ mentioned this, though, that the singing and dancing went to Meryl Streep in the beginning, because when she read the roles, that she thought she would be going out for the role of Helen, yeah. And she thought that the singing and dancing would go more to Goldie Hawn, because this suits her and her skill set more. But turns out not. This is what they wanted her for this role. And in fairness, I like that better because I think Goldie Hawn's better at playing the unhinged.
Yeah, she did a great job.
So yes, what do you think about these actors? Again, Goldie Hawn being the only one that you normally think of coming in here. What do you think their chemistry is together, DJ?
I think it's wonderful. And it's gonna be harder later on when we try to recast this because I don't think I can. I'm really happy with the chemistries that worked out. I think they're brilliant together. I mean, the way it is shot, it really does center around the three of them: Helen, Ernest, and Madeline. So I think it's wonderful.
You mentioned earlier that they're strong characters. I think it's interesting that Bruce Willis is one of the most weak-willed people that you will ever meet, and that he is so easily manipulated, like a metronome, just back and forth, and whoever he's with at the moment can mold in him and shape him. And I think that's why these women like him, because they can just push him around. That and he has money.
He's an empty vessel, yeah.
Yeah, and his panicky, high-paced, frenetic nature. To me, that was a really fun dynamic. Again, Meryl Streep perhaps being the more straight, serious one who sets up the joke, and it's how Bruce Willis reacts to them is what's so funny. And then obviously you got Goldie Hawn, who's like, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
So.
And the brilliance there is that because they made him so weak, not an alpha male, in the scene where he actually strangles Madeline, which is some heavy stuff, it's spousal abuse. This is bad stuff. You would feel bad for the woman, but you end up feeling bad for him.
She's pretty terrible for 50 minutes before that point. So I normally am with you on that one, but this is the one time where it's just like, maybe you give her that little extra boop at the top of the steps. So, Bryan, what about you? What characters did you actually like in this? I guess they're all very flawed characters.
Well, I found a couple little nitpicky things later on after watching this that made me like parts of this movie even better. I've really liked Isabella Rossellini for a lot of different reasons, but one of her lesser known aspects was Jennifer Garner's aunt in the TV show Alias. Huh. So she was a recurring character in that, and that's kind of where she really endeared herself to me, more so just because that was a show really close to me. But one of the other things, and also dealing with having to do with Rossellini, is Catherine Bell was her body double for the naked scenes. And I don't know if you guys ever watched Jag,
yes,
but had I known that, I would have gone back and rewatched this earlier.
Yes. She's also in Bruce Almighty, for those of you who wondering who Catherine Bell is. She's a lovely lady.
She is very attractive.
It's true.
And I had no idea that she had a body double.
I didn't know that either, but in fairness, they were going for that youthful look, and so Rossellini is 38 in this movie, which they do draw attention to that at one point.
They do.
And I guess Catherine Bell's in her 20s, so they were really driving home the point that this youthful, eternal potion works. Plus, bigger name actress doesn't always want to... I guess she hasn't had any trouble taking her clothes off on film. Never mind. She wouldn't shy away from that. Good point. Good point. I don't know. Scratch that last thought. Sometimes a bigger name actress doesn't say, I'm not getting naked. I'm not cheap. Which, by the way...
if you want to see more, pay more.
Yes. Why do you think why do you think Madeline is so driven by being called cheap? It's like Biff being called chicken.
That is her Achilles tendon, and that's exactly what I thought. That was the equation I made to it when she's walking away, and if she just kept walking, she could have been fine. She wouldn't have gotten pushed down the stairs, but she goes back in because she was called cheap. She took the bait. So why do we do anything? Why do I care about, I don't know, if I'm called some stupid name, or it's why do you let it get to you?
I don't know.
We all have our buttons.
I don't know what my button is. Bryan, do I have a button?
Not that I know of.
Postmodern facades.
Oh, that's
sorry.
Yeah, Kobe Bryant and postmodern facades. That'll do it for me. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned about having a difficult time picking who to recast. Did you know that Bruce Willis was originally cast, or the desired to cast was Kevin Kline, who's in a movie, Fish Called Wanda, which is the first one that comes to my mind. I think he would have been good at this. But I like Bruce Willis so much I wouldn't want to take him out.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's a good pick, though.
I liked Kevin Kline until I saw Wild Wild West.
We're gonna expunge that from everybody's record. Will Smith, everybody gets a pass on that one.
It took watching Hitchcock for me to forgive Will Smith for that movie.
Oh, I liked it, but I probably saw that one a little bit too much too.
Fun fact, that is the movie that Will Smith took instead of taking the role of Neo in The Matrix.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
He was their first choice for that one, and he didn't get the pitch. And he was overwhelmed by a complicated story, and he's just like, look, I'm going to go do Wild Wild West. Just in the spectrum of good choice, bad choice, he took... he's like, man, why didn't I take the red pill?
Wiki Wild Wild.
I actually don't mind the song, so that was probably the best thing that came out of it. Meryl Streep, though, did not enjoy her part in this movie. Well, she did not enjoy the acting process of this because it's an effects-driven movie, and she's obviously more of a dramatic actress. And so she did not like having to work with blue screen conditions or acting like somebody who's there to not be able to play off of them. So she said whatever contradiction that you can apply to that kind of comedy was just shredded for her. If you stand there like a piece of machinery, they would get machinery to do it. I loved how it turned out in the end, and I still like it, but it's not fun to act like a lampstand, to pretend this is Goldie right there. No, I'm sorry, Bob. She went off the mark by 5 centimeters, and now her head won't match her neck. And to do all that was like being at the dentist for her, which, as the son of a dentist, that's not nice. But I never mind going to the dentist.
But talking about the effects, like I feel that's one of the beauties of this film is that they did hold up very well through time.
That is a good point. It's a pretty decent movie, appearance-wise. Even now, I was surprised that the effects were from 1992, but I felt like everything else around me felt like it was 1988 or 1989. The environments, the wardrobe, and I think I might have misunderstood. In my head, put this back in the 80s while watching it, because I just saw some situations where it's just like, man, is this 92? Like it's awfully late for either that piece of clothing or that article or that hairdo or whatever. So anyway, Bryan, let's talk about the look and the feel of the movie.
I mean, I thought it had a very Edward Scissorhands kind of feel to it. I feel like everything that they did, all the shots they chose to use were very stylized, very dark, while using sharp contrasts. Like the reds are all very red. Everything Goldie Hawn was in stark contrast to Meryl Streep's white. Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of gave me that Edward Scissorhands vibe.
So white, that's a good point. Red being like anger, which she's clearly
rage,
she's in
passion.
Rage. Why white, do you think, though, for this character who maybe black would suit her more? She seems very unpleasant. Is the best way of putting it. I mean, she's vain. She's shallow. I wonder why white.
To quote the great warrior poet Paula Abdul, she's a cold-hearted snake.
Okay.
She don't play by rules.
Okay. Icy, maybe, like snow.
Icy, yeah.
Okay. That's fine. I'll take that. I had to reconcile that when you said that. So, DJ, you mentioned being a Robert Zemeckis fan, and he is both the producer and the director of Death Becomes Her. Where do you see Robert Zemeckis in this movie, and talk about maybe some of the other things that he had done and why you were enthusiastic for him as a director?
Yeah, so like my first experience with him was the Back to the Future trilogy, which is like one of my all-time favorite movie trilogies ever. Like, I think it's great. Aside from that, I also grew up watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit a lot. Mm-hmm. And this one played in the background as well. Again, at the time, I did not know it was a Robert Zemeckis. Like, so going back and realizing and connecting these dots between all of his films, I appreciate it so much more now versus then. I also love Tales from the Crypt a lot too, which he did around the same time period as this. And a lot of people have commented that it feels a lot like an extended Tales from the Crypt episode in the storytelling of it. So I can't really define specifically what I like about his style, because it's kind of it's conflated with a lot of nostalgia for me. But I love the storytelling. I love the special effects. I love the kind of the slapstick comedy that's involved here and the kind of dark nature of the story.
I think there's a bit of, you could say there's a bit of a twisted bend even in Back to the Future, in terms of you have this mother falling in love or wooing her son.
Her son.
So, I mean, we love these characters so much, but at the end of the day, that was a movie that had a hard time getting made because nobody wanted to pick it up because they would just be like, I mean, like Disney got pitched the movie and they were like, I'm not touching this. That's incest. That's
too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I can't deal with that. And so that darkness that you're talking about does seem to be in there. And that bigger than life nature of it, this is bigger than Romancing the Stone, but he did Romancing the Stone as well in '84. Forrest Gump. That's another really
deals
good
with AIDS.
That's true. That one's more grounded in reality, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah. Bryan, Robert Zemeckis, give us some of your thoughts.
I did not know it was Robert Zemeckis until I was watching the credits at the end of the movie, and that kind of made me raise an eyebrow based on the movies that I have been like really into of his. Probably my favorite of his movies, and this is no disrespect to Back to the Future trilogy, but What Lies Beneath was one of my favorite thrillers.
That's a good one.
And I absolutely love that movie. Harrison Ford also doing something he does not typically do in that movie. You know, I don't know. I completely dug it from the standpoint that I'm like, okay, yeah, I see aspects of this movie, parts of his work. But I'd say it's probably upper third of his work, if I had to put it into a category. He's also done some ones where I'm like, dude, seriously.
Perhaps some of the ones that you're talking about seriously is I think that later in his career, his passion for visual effects goes into animation. And that takes him to do movies like Polar Express, which was... technology wasn't quite there yet. It seems unnerving. The people looked too real, but too
plastic.
Yeah, like there's something almost like you're watching Chucky, the Polar Express, even though it's a children's story. It's just off-putting. I did like the movie Beowulf, but again, it was odd that they chose to do this computer animation again of people. It just was a strange moment for that. And then A Christmas Carol, which is a Jim Carrey movie, but again, it's an animated thing. Again, the people just don't look like... I think you're better off to make cartoon characters look like cartoon characters.
Beowulf would be my very, very bottom one of his movies.
Really? Well, he has pretty good movies, so...
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Contact is a thought-provoking movie, and it's well done, but it's a little arduous to get through. It's long, it's dry, and Contact is probably my bottom point for my Zemeckis. I remember going to the theater and that one and being like, this is going to be great. And then I got out of there, I was like, man, I don't know. The payoff's not there at the end. And
Allied wasn't particularly good.
I did not see Allied. So,
did you ever see Allied with Bruce Willis and, or not Bruce, I'm sorry, Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard?
Nope. No.
I didn't either.
What is it about his career, though, that after, like, I'd say Castaway with Tom Hanks is his last really good movie that I would say.
I agree.
What happens to Robert Zemeckis in the year 2000? He goes away for 4 years before attempting to do the Polar Express, and then like Bryan is alluding to, there's not a lot of integrity there. So Robert Zemeckis, what happened to you? We want to know.
Tell us.
I didn't see Flight, and I heard Welcome to Marwin was good, but I didn't see it either. So I can't really speak to his latter 2000s career. But no, it's an accurate point. There were just there's some definitely duds in there. He definitely produced some, like he really went heavy into producing horror for a while. So maybe that was why he stepped away from the camera. He produced like The Reaping, House of Wax, Gothica, Ghost Ship.
Ghost Ship.
Hey, reference back.
Best death scene for DJ.
Here it is. 13 Ghosts, House on Haunted Hill. Like he was all producer in all of those. So it's just one of those things where I think he was kind of he was on a kick. What Lies Beneath was one that he actually directed during that time. So, you know, he probably got onto a thing. And then when he came back to directing, he wanted to kind of take it easy on himself a little bit, let the animators do the work. And then two turds popped out.
Yeah. I also wonder if it has to do with the kind of the team he assembled early on, and like over time as they became more established in their own careers and in their own right, them leaving and doing other things. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the special effects studio that worked on Death Becomes Her later went on to do Jurassic Park.
That's right. IGM, I believe it is.
Right on.
Sorry, ILM. The Industrial Light and Magic Team, which is a terrible name for a company.
Yeah.
Get a better name.
There's also some weird ones out there in the production community. So
It's true. Every time a movie is about to begin, they always show the studios or the effects teams that are involved with them, and I always think the movie's about to begin. And then I realize, oh, that's just a studio. And then I'm like, okay, this is the movie. Oh, no, that's just another one of those things.
if you really want to see the really weird name corporate entities for like sound and lighting and visual effects and cinematography and stuff out there, wait until like 5 minutes before a post-credit scene of an Avengers movie and read some of the names of these companies, because Jess and I always get a big kick at it's like, oh, it's Green Thumb Man, Button Hook, lighting execs. And you're just like, what? You just words from a Scrabble dictionary and said, that's it. Pick 6 of them. That's our name.
Maybe they have an app for that, like, you know, what you're going to name your company, or like, it's like name your band, like, just like you put it in, like you get 2 random words together. So,
Name generator.
yeah. Orange Octopus.
Just a name
Boom.
generator. Yeah.
There's your company name or band name, whatever you want.
Nailed it. Bug hits windshield ink. It happened to me last night.
So this
Splat.
this movie had a series of different endings. I don't know if you guys were familiar with any of these or not. DJ, do you want to talk about any of those?
Well, I've never actually seen them. I've only ever read about them. So please help me out here as I go. But supposedly, after the movie was originally shot and put together, they had to recut it because it did not receive very well reviews. And a lot was actually taken out. Some of these scenes were actually still included in the movie's trailer. But in particular, Tracy Ullman was originally in this film. Her role was cut completely. She was a bartender who was supposed to kind of assist Bruce Willis's character Ernest in his kind of overcoming of things. And how did it end originally? Like,
So the way that one works is Ullman's character Tony helps Ernest ruse of faking his own death in order to get away from Madeline, Helen, and
Leslie.
Leslie. And the plan works, and the two end up running away to Europe, starting a new life together. Many years later, Madeline and Helen both parodies their former selves with a cracked, peeling paint. They've got putty covering their gray and rotting flesh, and they're on vacation in Switzerland, and they are completely bored and miserable, and they notice an elderly couple being affectionate, and they become envious of them. As the couple gets into the car and drives away, Madeline and Helen realize that it's Ernest and Tony. They chase after them, only to be hit by an oncoming car and break into pieces, very similar to the theatrical ending that you have in the other movie. So that does not sound as good, by the way. As I mentioned earlier, I really like the eulogy scene where they don't just lay it on thick, like they really lay it on thick. Like, life doesn't really begin until you're 50. And he had 2 sons and 4 daughters and started 3 charities and, touched the lives of so many.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
It's interesting. This movie takes place in New York. I didn't feel like it was New York to me.
Tim Burton, New York.
Yeah, I guess. It's filmed in LA, and that's why it felt like it was California.
Well, so we go from New York to Beverly Hills. So we are jumping.
Did they mention that?
Yeah, so like in the 1978 sequence, that's Broadway, New York, hence the kind of reigning Tim Burton-esque kind of look to it. And then we jump to Beverly Hills, and that seems to be where the rest of it takes place.
I did not realize that. I missed that because that was eating at me the whole time. Because the first part they said Broadway, and did they say Beverly Hills 7 years later? Because it just says 7 years later. I thought, and I just assumed we were still in New York.
It did just say 7 years later. I'm trying to figure out how I inferred that.
You've just accepted it with multiple viewings, I think, because I never knew that we were in California. I kept sitting there, I was like, are we in California now? This feels like California.
Oh, I know, because in the scene where, like, after Madeline has shot Helen, Ernest is freaking out because the neighbors are going to hear, and she's like, in the entire 12 years we've been in Hollywood or Beverly Hills, have you ever seen the neighbors?
Good point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
He called me on that. Well, that's one of my little things that I can put to rest. I still think it should say 7 years later in L.A.
Yeah, give us a location.
Yeah, and so it starts in 1978, And that's where we have really homely looking Helen introducing her to Madeline introducing Ernest to Madeline. And so then they skip 7 years later to Fat Helen, which is 1985, which some people like to point out that's the same year as Back to the Future for Robert Zemeckis' purposes. So also the year I was born. So
we actually do get an October 20th, 1985 date, and that date is used on the time machine in Back to the Future.
Really,
reference.
Really specific then. And then another 7 years later is where we pick up most of this movie, which is in what was present day at the time in 1992. And even though it looks like 1988 to me. And then I like the eulogy scene in 37 years later in 2029. So that's your timeline of the movie. So what do you think about the environments? You've actually dispelled one of my biggest hangups on this movie of why we were in New York versus Los Angeles. But why do you think they did that? Why do you think they started New York and went Los Angeles, DJ?
Well, I mean, this is kind of like the history of Hollywood. Like the film industry began in New York and then later migrated to Hollywood. So you have that kind of interesting little happy accident going on. It is, again, a film about vain people obsessed with youth. And I mean, I don't mean to stereotype Hollywood people if you're out there, LA people, but you do tend to be a very, let's say, pretty culture out there.
Superficial. Yeah. That's fair.
As Patton Oswalt would have said it, they moved from a place in New York, which is a city without a future, to a city like LA, which has no past.
Okay.
Perfect.
I like that. Some interesting things that just jumped off the page and perhaps made me just tip my head. We have the Greystone Mansion, which this thing is in so many movies. It's an Ernest funeral home, and it's built in 1928 by George Kaufman. It's in There Will Be Blood, The Prestige, it's Spider-Man, like where the Osborns live, The Bodyguard, Eraserhead. I mean, if you ever want to see like one structure that hosted so many movies, it's the Greystone Mansion for sure. And the other one was Ebel of Los Angeles, the notable women's club in LA, which was built in 1927. And also the paint can where she falls down the steps is at St. Mary's University. So some moments of LA. And I guess it had to be LA to be around the celebrities. Is another good point. So, like, because you had Greta Garbo being mentioned. You had, who were some of these celebrities that they mentioned? Elvis was one of the ones who had taken the potion, was hiding.
James Dean was in there.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite one because he was getting his car at the time. Jim Morrison's in there.
Morrison, yeah. Andy Warhol, but he was New York.
Yes. Well, he would probably be everywhere, right? I
mean,
wherever the party goes, I'm sure Andy will go as well. And Marilyn Monroe was with him. I like that. So the rule is you get to live a long time, but you have to go into hiding, so to speak, or keep it on the down low. Fake your death. So DJ, I gotta ask at this point: would you take the potion? Would you stay young?
I'm going to say yes just for fun. Like, I want to see. I have to take really good care of myself and not get killed, basically.
It seemed like everybody else was doing a better job of that.
Yeah, like, how are they able to live these, like, discreet lives, like, and maintain?
Yeah. I don't know. Spray paint. Bryan, what about you, man? Are you, you're at Isabella Rossellini's mansion, and she's offering you, she makes your hand look like it's 10 years younger. Are you drinking the drink?
No, I do far too many stupid things for that to be a legitimate option for me. I'd be losing limbs left and right. God, I've had a conglomerate of interesting injuries in my life. I've broken skull, collarbone, back, nose a couple times, leg. Yeah, it's not. I am not of a ability to keep myself whole. So I'll pass.
Yeah, and the worst one was the sledding accident.
Yeah, actually the three worst of those injuries came in one fell swoop.
Sledding, you got to watch out. That's why he moved out to Spokane, where the sledding gets even more serious. Think of all the damage that you could ensue. That's why you shouldn't drink that. Good point to not drink that, Bryan. I'll be honest with you. I've always kind of thought being a vampire, it was a pretty good deal. Like, I would just drink people's blood who suck. Like, I mean, that's no pun intended, but I mean, I'd be like, I don't know, I might get like a job as like part-time like night warden or whatever, like at a jail or whatever, and be like, it's like, oh, that guy killed children. Like, he had like 12 body stuff under his porch. It'd be like, all right, eternal life's pretty good gig. I'll just drink this guy's blood and go back home. And, you know, immortal life seems pretty good. Think of the power of compounding interest over time. I mean, do you have any idea how good your 401k looks after like 300 years? I mean, you've got multiple houses. None of them can have windows. But, I mean, it's a small price to pay. I was thinking about it. So my initial thought would have been like, yeah, I'll drink this drink. And I'm not thinking about it in terms of just looking good. I'm just thinking about it in terms of, like, man, I can get a lot done in forever.
It would be an interesting go at it, right?
Yeah.
To your point about the blood bank and how you would, do that. You know what?
I totally get you on the vampire piece, but I wouldn't do it this direction. Like, I get you on the vampire direction because I don't feel like you fall apart. I feel like this is a very fall aparty thing.
You're right. In fact, if you get a good drink of blood, you completely regenerate. So, but you can't go out at night.
And so
but you only have to go out at night.
Yeah, and that's one question I have is obviously if you have some sort of mortal injury upon taking this elixir, you're dead but still animated. But what about injuries? Like, do they heal faster? Like, what's going to go on? Like, if you get a cut, a broken bone, like...
It seems like you're stuck with it. She said you have to take care of your body.
See, I don't think anything heals. Game over.
But what's weird is it makes his hand better. Like, she cuts his hand.
And then it heals.
It heals and makes him look better.
Well, there's the initial rejuvenation.
Yeah, can you get a touch-up drink, I'm wondering? Like a shot?
Like a booster shot?
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's a one-off.
It does seem to be that kind of deal. I also thought it was interesting. Isabella Rossellini said her character was in her 70s. Is that correct?
71, I believe.
Right.
78.
Would you have liked it better
sure.
had she been like 800 years old and has been doing this for centuries?
I think they should have gone that route. Like, just do something that was like clearly just like, what? No, you're not 300 or 800 or however many, centuries old.
Right. I think it would be fun for her to know like historical figures of like, I gave the elixir to Winston Churchill. I mean, yeah, he's retired now. He's in Hawaii or whatever.
Cayman Islands somewhere.
Yeah. Or, yeah, I gave the elixir to Biggie. Oh, he was still alive at this point.
Spoiler alert.
Spoilers. Damn it, Russell.
Oops. Well, we already put out the warning. There will be spoilers ahead. So, sorry to all of you in 1992 who didn't know that Biggie's demise was coming. And Tupac's too.
No!
So another person you mentioned, part of the team, is Dean Cundley, is the cinematographer. He's somebody who works with ILM on Jurassic Park as well, I believe, as well as he was in the Back to the Future movies as well. So the cinematographer. One thing I noticed, we're talking about the direction a little bit, is there's a number of mirror shots in this movie. There's a number of scenes where you don't even know they're in a mirror until they zoom out. Like when she first wakes up in the morning, Madeline, when she first gets up in the morning, her poor assistant has to come in and say, boy, you look even younger today, Madeline. And they zoom out and it's a mirror shot. Goldie Hawn, I actually was sitting there thinking, did they move her mole to the other side of the face? Is that mole fake? I was starting to think. But it zooms out and it's a mirror. And not only is it a mirror, it's a mirror with all of this, like, kill Madeline, like, glued to the wall everywhere. So obviously, I think this is a reinforcement of the fact that these people are vain. So, but I think that was a really nice job. These won't be my best shots of the movie per se, but that was a really good job from the director to do that, to immerse you into these people are looking at a mirror all the time.
And to that point, like the feel of the cinematography speaking is like it has some kind of Tim Burton feels to it. I also felt a lot of like 1930s kind of film noir. Like, again, it is kind of like close-up shots on the actors and actresses, like really kind of intimate looks. Only occasionally do you kind of get some kind of vast overviews. The architecture in me did not stand out as much because there's not a lot of images of a total building. It's more just like a stairway or a room or a hall of some sort.
Isabella Rossellini's mansion looks like it's
That's
a million
pretty
feet
epic.
tall.
Yeah, that is pretty epic.
Yeah. This movie has a lot of really great costume work, and the first one that comes up to me is the fat suit costume. Bryan, what do you think about the fat Goldie Hawn here?
Oh, I mean, that was hilarious. That whole part with her being a cat lady eating, was that like sour cream?
It was cake frosting.
Cake
yogurt?
frosting. I was wondering.
Just straight cake frosting.
I was just like, oh man, That is just wow.
That's dark. That was definitely. Oh, and I know what I was gonna say now. It was you said Tim Burton. This movie reminds me of Beetlejuice.
Ah.
It's the
Sure.
it's the reanimated death nature of it. Obviously, you don't have the great forced perspective of these little models
These
and the
little
sandworms zipping through things, and the colors aren't Tim Burton, so it's not that fantasy. But I thought when I saw this, there's really nothing like this. And then I thought to myself, maybe a little bit of Beetlejuice in here. And Bryan said Edward Scissorhands earlier, and you just said Tim Burton. So I'm coming back full circle, and I'm going to go with that.
There's a lot of rain in the movie, too. A lot of rain and thunderstorms.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean,
It's just a very dark movie.
yeah, it's you got to have a little bit of a sense of ominous nature because there's some supernatural play at hand. So a lot of great costume work here. They really olded up Bruce Willis. I had just happened to see the movie The Jackal on TV, and which Bruce Willis is actually older in that, but he looked like to me young because he's got all of his hair, and I'm like, wow, look how young Bruce Willis looks in 1997. And then I saw this, and I was like, Bruce Willis doesn't look good in this. And I'm sitting there going, what year is this again? And like, I didn't realize quite right away because the makeup actually is pretty good. That they really olded him up, and furthermore, they drove the point home. They make him very pale. Like they give him the spots, and I think they made Meryl Streep look old as well. Did they not?
They did, yeah.
Yeah. DJ, what are your thoughts on how they used makeup and costume and wardrobe to make all the characters show that time passage and that age?
They did a wonderful job. Like it really sold the part, like to make these people feel older. A fun fact is that they actually constructed this kind of pneumatic bra for Meryl Streep during her kind of rejuvenation scene that would push her breasts up.
So it's a machine that does that?
However, it never worked quite well. So what they ended up having to do is she had an assistant standing behind her who would push her breasts up from underneath on cue to make them look firmer. And
so the assistant said, "You know what, Meryl? The machine's not working. Don't worry about it. I've got it." How's that?
the hands are warm.
Robert, you know what? I don't feel like I lifted him up the right way. Let's do it again. You know what? I feel like I was pushing up a little more on the left than the right. I think
Let's do it again.
Let's just, I want this to be right. This is a very important scene. It's going to be in the previews, I'm pretty sure. I mean, if this looks wrong, people aren't going to come to the movie, Robert. It's like, I think we got it. It's like, you don't have it. That's a very funny story. I didn't know about that one. So at Helen Sharp's book signing event, upon closer inspection, there's a brooch pinned on one of the straps of Helen's dress. The brooch is the same brooch that Leslie gives her clients. So it's like that little pin that she gives them as a subtle cue that Helen has already taken the potion between her and the time of the mental institution. And so when she sees Madeline and Ernest again for the first time at the book signing event, she's younger. We don't know that. We just think she's gotten her life together as a way to stick it to Meryl Streep's character or Madeline's character. But DJ, you've seen this far more than I have. Had you ever noticed the little brooch pin?
I had never actually
Goldie
noticed
Hawn?
the pen.
Yeah. So that's one of those little things that I had to read about it and then go back and look for it. It is there, but...
I did, however, notice in the scene where she's trying to seduce Ernest and she keeps saying, sex, sexy, sexual. She has lipstick on her front teeth the entire time. And it is not sexy, but...
Bruce Willis has zero cares.
He does. It's true. He looks like...
He's beguiled.
He actually reminds me of like Austin Powers, like where he's like, twins, Basil. Another funny thing is how much they've unsexied Goldie Hawn when we first meet her. And so my first thought too when we came into the movie, I was just like, man, Goldie Hawn looks pretty rough in this movie.
A little dowdy.
Yeah. And do either of you guys have a friend that you have to bring? Like if you were dating somebody back in the day, like did you have a Madeline Swan test?
I did not know.
No, okay.
Nope. You have to have friends that are capable of that sort of thing first. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I would have hung around with anybody that I'd be like, oh, I'm going to use this as this is going to be a test because that person would steal a person in a heartbeat. And then I'm like, why would I be friends with that person?
Yeah, that's true.
They never actually go back and tell the backstory on these two. I am a little bit curious to know how these two became friends because I thought they were sisters for quite some time in this movie. and then they mention there's context that alludes to that they are.
I want to say it has something to do with either junior high or college, because at one point Madeline mentions that she was always jealous of Helen's GPA.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of school rivalry or something.
Interesting.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't this be even more fun if they were sisters? So therefore there was a reason for them to be stuck together like this to some degree, and it would have been a lifelong feud.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I was kind of thinking, that like,
I can see it.
yeah, it takes 50 minutes for her to die. DJ, do you feel like the pace of the movie is right? Like, do you like the build up? It's quite a long build up, really, before the main plot device kicks in that she's dead and that they know it. I feel like the energy really picks up on the movie once she does die, and she's being reanimated in the background. He's trying to cover up a murder scene. They go to the hospital. These are some of the best scenes in the movie for me. How do you feel about that long lead-in?
For me, it doesn't bother me, because I think the dialogue, there are so many good one-liners and so many kind of like funny scenes, for me at least, that I feel like it almost starts off like rising action immediately, very quickly, and it doesn't really cease until the eulogy for me at the end. Okay.
Yeah. What about you, Bryan?
It might have been a little slow at the beginning. Again, I was trying to reconcile the vague memories I had of this movie with what was actually happening. So I probably could have spent more time just purely enjoying it.
Upon a second watch, I enjoyed it more, though. So I don't know. DJ, you might be able to confirm this. I don't know how many times you have seen it, but it seems like it's the kind of movie that gets better with age. With more viewings.
It does. Like, to the point when you can memorize a dialogue and start spitting it back. Like, that's the kind of brilliance of it.
So we were talking a little bit about the getting younger scene, the hydraulic bra scene that didn't work out so well. That's actually, I want to talk a little bit more about that on the special effects, because again, when I first started watching this movie, I was thinking, it's like Meryl Streep, she looks the same now as she did then, and I don't mean that in a good way to now, I mean that in like, was she ever young? And so I also didn't realize that she was young too, but I mean, again, they had that scene, I don't know how they made her face go from being kind of worn to looking a lot more like herself and being vibrant. I didn't detect any big cuts or cutaways or how they would have done that back then. Now with computers and stuff like that, I tried to look that up, but no indication of how they did that. And I again, in 1992, I give them a lot of credit on that. That looks really good. I just wanted to call that out as a good moment for the effects. So, Bryan, did you have any special effects moments that you particularly were impressed with?
I mean, I always enjoyed the part where she gets shot, and just in terms of her sitting down on a couch and that what was left of the shovel handle like literally goes through her torso as she's sitting there. So yeah, stuff like that. Like that was an amusing part.
And that was actually allegedly a mistake. Like Goldie Hawn missed her mark when she sat down on that couch and mistakenly sat where the shovel end was supposed to be. And if you actually watch that scene a little more closely, you'll see that they move it a little bit. Like as she's sitting down, it shifts downward, so it kind of skewers through the hole in her stomach or her abdomen.
Huh. I wonder how they did that then, because I made the assumption that she would have worn like a blue dot on her dress to do blue screen on, and they would have shot the film with like the scene with nobody in it and then overlaid the exposures. But I'm wondering how you do that if she's got like a blue dot on her dress, how you do that in post, how you can fix that later. That's interesting.
Hollywood, man.
Yeah, actually, when you can't explain it, I always am extra impressed. Usually when you do explain it, I lose my interest for it in modern day movies. But it's actually the opposite. Like when you go back and do like in the Wizard of Oz episode, like when they were talking about how they did like the Twister and stuff like that, I thought like the nitty gritty almost like play like this is how we did it, like because we really had to do it. Somehow in the old movies, like how resourceful they had to be with how limited they were. Then I'm impressed when you tell me how you do it. But like I think by the 90s, the 90s is the transitional decade. Like early on, it's like, wow, that's really neat how you thought to overcome that challenge or make it look more real. And by the end of the 90s, computers are coming in more, and it's just like, oh, you used ones and zeros, and
the magic box did it.
Yeah, and I don't want to diminish anybody who does visual effects through computers, but somehow doing it the old way seems more like It's just oh, that's fun. I like how they did that. And this movie has a lot of those moments for me. So I have a good time with the effects. Even how their body breaks into pieces and their heads are upside down. Again, they've just got like a bodysuit that's blue to mask out their body and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know what they would just cheat their way through that digitally as well now too. So
they also use some animatronics for this, and I don't know. I can't actually tell what is animatronic versus what is like CGI.
Well, I think one thing that had to be CGI was the reanimation scene when she gets up, because nobody can tangle themselves. I don't think that was a dummy either. And also, she was walking through the room with her head backwards. That had to have been CGI looking back on that one, but it still looks pretty good.
It does.
I can think of many other worse CGI moments in the 90s after this. I'm thinking of, like, just right off the bat, like, Blade has some really bad CGI that just comes to my mind right away. So, I don't know about you, but Brian, what's...
Heck, there was bad CGI in the third Matrix movie.
Yeah, bad CGI moments. I don't know if you have any of those, DJ.
Not that I can readily think of. They will come to me later, probably.
Okay. What do you think about this score, DJ?
It's good. I like it. I mean, it just... I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of, what I could equate it to. Like, it's your typical kind of like violin kind of build up, kind of thing going on. Brian, any thoughts from you?
Absolutely. I was humming the little 3-chord piece 2 hours after we watched the movie last night. So, like, even if it's just a little thing, I love it when movies do that. There was the little whistle song in Kill Bill.
Oh, yeah.
I still walk around and have that in my head. So it doesn't have to exactly. So it doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be, a good, clever, easily stuck in your head thing to be memorable.
And I feel like they repeated a lot in this film too. Was that just me, or did it actually reoccur like quite?
I take mini watches to try and get the soundtrack. But
they did. They had like it happened anytime something dramatic would happen. You'd have this little like snippet of sound.
Now, I really like this one. Again, it's not something I don't think that I could come out of it humming it quite as well as Bryan did, and it takes more watches for a soundtrack to hit on me, but I will tell you, it nailed every moment and made it better. It took the larger than life moments. Like, I love like when Bruce Willis, it's a miracle, and like the music comes to this crescendo and there's a like big thunderbolt behind him in the skylight, and on multiple occasions throughout this movie, the score responds well and just elevates the moment. And again, I like this kind of campy humor, I think is a good way of putting it. And I mean that in the best way possible. And so I thought this was really a very good score. And it's got a creepy vibe to it when it needs to. And it also just kind of has fun. It never goes so creepy that you feel like you're in a horror movie, but it's like got that campy, creepy side of things where it's just like, I'm still having fun, but it's dark.
It's good. I mean, Back to the Future is another one where the score is really a very well done piece. I love it. The intro from Tales from the Crypt, another good one. Creepy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The only soundtrack number that I had a little bit of criticism on was in the beginning when Meryl Streep's doing her number. That I guess it's I Saw Me, or It's Gotta Be Me, or
I See Me.
I See Me.
Yeah.
Which is in a mirror. It's very, that makes sense. So I See Me, I would go more dripping and more, I'd go full out Springtime for Hitler, because people have to be getting up and leaving this movie. That's a producer's reference that I'm making here, of course, where they put this musical on that was so bad that it was meant to be a failure. But I want to see the music number be really tacky bad and on the nose, like so bad. I thought the lyrics could have been funnier there.
Yeah.
Like people have to to leave angry. One thing before we get into a few other things is what was the deal with the hospital, DJ? A Tim Burton moment that made me think about this was all the door frames were painted bubblegum pink. The wallpaper had like this jungle print on it.
It was, yeah.
Like they had like this shower curtain that like was pulled up. Like they again had this jungle print. It was the only moment of true stylized moments like this, because even the mansion just like was a creepy big mansion, or like they lived in a big, huge, nice house with this plastic surgeon. Why was the hospital so weird, do you think?
Actually,
it's really stylized.
It is very stylized.
Because why not?
Yeah. I'm wondering if this is where they get the 90s decor in, because everything else was in an older building, like it was meant to look a little bit more grand or something, and the hospital just was kind of the throwaway zone where you could do the tacky printed curtains and...
I don't know. If you have any idea, like, I was hoping you could clear that up on me. I was like, you know what? DJ might know when we get together on this one. But when I was watching it on my second pass through, it hit me as like, what's with this jungle print stuff? So that's not in any hospital.
I'm wondering if Zemeckis was like at a clinic or a hospital at some point in like the previous year and was just looking around like, yes, this.
I don't know.
Yeah, some reconnaissance for future films.
And the beauty spot that Madeline goes to is, as DJ mentioned earlier, out of my postmodern nightmares. Everything is like powder blue and like saturated. Everything.
Fake stone portals that look like styrofoam.
Oh gosh, yeah. So if you ever want to know what Russell doesn't like in architecture, that would be one of the many examples of it. So anyway, let's go into the look for this moments. There's a lot of fun facts in this, but DJ, do you have any look for this moments?
I mentioned the Goldie Hawn lipstick scene. In the kind of dream sequence where her and Ernest are kind of concocting their scheme to kill Madeline, and you get to the end of their proposal where they're gonna make it look like she was drunk driving. They throw the car over a cliff and it explodes in this ball of flames, and you're sitting in the morgue with her corpse, and they lift up the hand and you see the bottle in there. It's like, she was drunk, she had it coming. There's then a look at the death certificate where they stamp it, and there's a brain right next to it that says abnormal, which I see as Frankenstein as well as Young Frankenstein references.
Yes.
Again, going back to film noir and relationships to old Hollywood movies, so I appreciate that.
I did catch that. That made me so happy. I saw it the first time too. I was like, ooh. That made me so happy because, again, I think of Young Frankenstein. It's like, did you get the brain I asked for? No, it's from an Abbey. Abbey normal. Bryan, do you have any look for this moments?
I think my big thing is one of the more CG visual effects is how they did the potion. I always thought that was cool. That was one of the things that I did remember from watching it all those years ago, is how that looked so cool. Aspects of Never-Ending Story and the way they show metaphysical things. I don't know. I just always enjoyed that.
So my look for this moment is going to be when they go... We talked about a lot of the fun dead celebrities that they had that weren't really dead there, but Isabella Rossellini's character refers to the, quote, "I want to be alone." And I didn't necessarily understand that reference, but as I mentioned earlier, this was from film legend Greta Garbo. Her actual words were, "I want to be left alone." So when she goes like, "I want to be left alone," like Meryl Streep goes, "No." Because
Really?
Yeah, my first pass through the movie, I was like, I don't. That's not.
It's like, what?
That's not doing it for me. I need more. Are we gonna continue with this? So, yeah.
Bryan, really quickly back to your point about the elixir. I've never been able to confirm this, but people at home should try. But if you look into the bottle and the few close-up scenes of or the vial, I should say, of the elixir itself, you can see a nude woman dancing.
Did not know that.
Oh, didn't know that either.
So that might be why you liked it.
Yeah.
Time for some superlatives, DJ. You ready to hand out some awards?
Let's do it.
MVP.
Meryl and Goldie.
Okay, it's a tie.
Tie.
I'm going to allow that this time. Bryan, MVP.
I'm going to go with Bruce, doing something a little different.
I'm actually going to go with Bruce Willis, too, because as I mentioned, particularly on my second pass through this movie, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, the comedy of him reacting to what these guys are doing, because they're playing it pretty straight. They're so mad at each other, they're feuding with each other, they're not even noticing that, hey, I'm reanimated from the dead, or I'm actually dead. The zaniness comes from Bruce Willis of oh, it's a miracle, like, how is this happening? Or I love the line of wait a minute, I'm starting to think that this isn't a miracle at all. His goofy nature, he takes it over the top, and like I said, I've seen Bruce Willis be funny, but not like this. And I now like Bruce Willis even more because of this movie. So he's my MVP. Best Supporting Actor.
Bruce Willis.
Okay. Probably for some of the reasons we were just saying. Yep. And Bryan, Best Supporting Actor.
I'm going to go with Isabella Rossellini for me. I thought she does creepy really well in this.
She does. And what is that accent she has, by the way? Like
Beautiful. I know. I love it.
But it is a little bit dark and creepy.
It is
at the same time. She's off-putting.
It's some sort of Eastern European.
Yeah. Well, I mean, her mother is famous actress Ingrid Bergman, and I can actually see that a little more in her face. My first introduction to her was Blue Velvet, which she doesn't look like herself in that movie, and I was just like, "Whew, this lady's got a lot going on." And this time around, like I could see that in her face. I was like, "Oh, she does kind of look like her mother," so which is a good thing. But yeah, I did like her, and I did have one other question. I don't know how that necklace stays in place.
Yeah.
The whole time, like that scene was going, I was just like, "How's that necklace staying on? That's covering her." So, who's your hidden gem, DJ?
I like Alaina Reed Hall, who is Helen's psychologist early on. And in particular, I love the whole scene where the psychologist asked her, "Helen, is there anything you'd like to talk about today?" And Helen pauses and is like, "Yes, I'd like to talk about Madeline Ashton." And the entire room just freaks out, like just loses everything.
Oh, Madeline Ashton. I said Madeline Swan earlier. I don't know where I got that from, but yes. Ashton. Good point.
I thought you meant like a swan, like she's like the pretty one, so you're just putting a swan test.
No, I think the whole wearing white thing, I was trying to make that work hard, but you're right, it's Ashton. I messed that up. So, correction department now. But no, that's a really good pick, by the way, and I like how she yells at her too.
Yes.
I like the fact that the therapist yells at the person, which is pretty funny. So, I might have a little more on that later. But Bryan, who is your hidden gem?
Gosh, there are a couple little things in this that I really liked, but I think I like the preacher the best at the very end of the movie, who just keeps going on and on about like literally the antithesis of the two women, and they're just not buying it, but how enriched his life was without them. Basically that every choice he made was pretty much the right one.
Yes,
outside of
John Ingle was his name.
Post them.
Yes, John Ingle was his name.
So I like that.
Okay, that's a great choice. Again, uncredited. I love Sidney Pollack's emergency room doctor. This is really up there for one of my favorite parts of the movie. His reaction of a doctor just not knowing what's going on just cracks me up. So I do want to give a small nod to Ian Ogilvy. The guy who does with the weird blink in his eye at the spa, who says like, "You should go check this out." So he's so eccentric physically that I don't know. When I first started watching this for the first pass, it was like, that guy's my hidden gem, calling it right now. And then later on, the doctor scene happened. I was just like, well, crap. It's going to be that now. So got to give a nod. DJ, if you had to recast somebody, who would it be, and who would you put in their place? That's the name of the game.
That's the point. Oh.
Sometimes it's if you could replace somebody and you get to, but this time I get the feeling that it's going to be forceful.
It's going to be forced, but I'm going to choose kind of what I thought was a throwaway role to begin with. But the maid of the house, I would recast her maybe as Robin Williams in some early drag.
Oh, I like it. You could get.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, there's an opportunity to get some more comedy out of that character. Bryan, recast.
I would like to. It's not necessarily a recast, although it's a changing cast. I would love to see this movie with Rossellini as Streep and Streep as Rossellini.
Oh, I think Rossellini would do a very good job. Actually, now that I think about it, I have a hard time seeing Streep going so dark. Do you? Like that?
I guess
oh, no.
This stems from wanting to see Isabella Rossellini in a bigger part in this movie, but I also think that Meryl Streep could probably do Temptress Sorceress pretty well.
I think she could as well. Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, as I doubted her with being funny in the first place, I'm doubting her again. I don't know why I keep doubting Meryl Streep, but I just, for some reason, I don't know. I trust you guys, though, on this one.
Fun fact, they are writing a Broadway musical of this right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we know the opening number.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I hope people don't get up and walk out in the opening number.
Let me see, because they announced who was going to star as Meryl Streep. Let me look at this.
While you do that, I'm going to go with my recast, and don't be mad. I see this as a great opportunity. As Alaina Reed Hall, who is the therapist, and I do think she's good, but I'm actually going to put Whoopi Goldberg in as the therapist. I think that she would have done a good job of like yelling at the patient.
Shoot, yeah.
And it's such a small part because Whoopi is at peak Whoopi right now. In 92, she does Sister Act, The Player, and Serafina that same year, and she's in Star Trek: The Next Generation. That all in that year. So she's a busy lady, but I think she can afford 10 minutes to run from one movie set over to yell at Goldie Hawn briefly in a fat suit, and I think that would be fun. So.
And that musical is going to be starring Kristen Chenoweth.
Oh, yeah. It has some name value.
Interesting. Best
shot of the movie, DJ.
The death scene where Madeline Ashton falls down the stairs, the sounds during that and just the cinematography like makes my skin crawl. Like,
That's a good one. You like that slow motion linger at the top of the stairs?
Yeah.
That's one of those moments that just like says like, we know we're campy and we're gonna just go all the way at it. And that I really like that. The dagger throw is another one of those ones like where like Bruce Willis takes a dagger and like throws it at like the light switch to hit the lights and run out of the room, and it's like perfectly thrown, like it's like so like a cartoon or something like that. No one would ever be able to do that. I like that goofy nature of this movie. So, or like how a gutter, like a rain gutter, sits there like cantilevers out 20 feet away from the building and holds up, even though even an old gutter's not going to hold up to a full-grown man hanging on it. So I like those cartoon moments. So, Bryan, what is your best shot?
I'm going to go with driving up to Leslie's Manor for the first time, keying back into those notes of Tim Burton. You really could have had like a Batmobile pull away as she pulled up, and I'd just laugh a little bit.
I would have liked that. My best shot is going to be when Bruce Willis, and part of it's the comedic timing of it, when Bruce Willis stands up and goes, "It's a miracle!" and the lightning crashes behind him in the skylight. And this is in the trailer of the movie as well. So I really like the framing of that shot, and again, great comedic timing in there. I do want to give a nod to the very opening of the movie where it starts off in the Broadway skyline and then it pans down and then you see the marquee and then it pans down and then you see people leaving the marquee. At the beginning of this movie, this movie starts off in a very pretty shot. And there's all those mirror shots too that I mentioned that weren't going to win, but they're noteworthy. For a comedy movie, there's some good shots. Best scene, DJ.
It's going to be that early opening scene where Helen is in therapy.
Is it because of the fat Goldie Hawn, or is it, again, it's the therapist?
Fat Goldie Hawn, the therapist, the way they all lose it. It's clearly this thing is torturing her, and she just kind of keeps reliving the same kind of broken moment again and again and can't get past it. Like, I think it's hilarious.
Bryan, what is your best scene?
Best scene is probably going to be the back and forth between Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep after they've really damaged each other the first time, and when they come to the conclusion that they're both better off with Bruce Willis's character because he can fix them.
Yes, and that was a really good twist of the movie that I didn't see coming. I'm going to go with the doctor's office. I love it when Sidney Pollack's sitting there holding her wrist and this doesn't hurt. This doesn't hurt. And then like he sees the neck bulge and like no doctor would go, "Oh gosh, oh no." And then Bruce Willis is like, "Maybe she's in shock. Maybe she's in shock. Yeah, let me check my stethoscope." And like the stethoscope's not working. Like he's like, and like throws it away in the garbage can, gets another stethoscope, and then goes up and he's like, "You have no heartbeat." And I was like, "What does that mean?" Exactly. and he's like, Bruce Willis has a flask out. He's like, "Let me have some of that." And then he like walks out of the room like taking his heart pills. And then later on we see that he has a heart attack. And he's like in disbelief of the whole situation. And then no sooner than that's over, you have Bruce Willis coming back in the room being like, because Meryl Streep finds out she's dead, she passes out, and then they think she's a body, they take her off the morgue, and Bruce Willis comes back and he goes, "Where is she?" "I'm terribly sorry, sir. I know how difficult this must be." "I know it is, but like, how can anyone explain it?" He goes, "I know, sir. There's no way of explaining it. But where did you put my wife?" "Don't worry about that. You just need to give yourself time to mourn and to grieve." It's like, "Where did you put my wife?" You're like frantically shaking her. And she was like, "She's dead, sir. She's in the morgue." "The morgue? She'll be furious." And
she's gonna be so mad.
That whole scene. Oh man, I watched it probably 3 times last night in preparation for this, and I was like taking notes. Like it wasn't just one funny thing; it was another funny thing. this is like wall-to-wall jokes, and it's really good. And it actually reminded me a little bit of Airplane, like when he's talking about like where'd you take my wife, and then like, you know, you're having one conversation, I'm having another conversation, and they both make sense, so we're able to continue to have this conversation, but we are not on the same wavelength at all. I love that kind of humor. That's a very smart way of writing. So long way of saying it, hospital scene. Change one thing, DJ.
Difficult. I can't. I really can't. I think it's perfect the way it is. I'm gonna be no fun here. I'm sorry.
You can have my cop out. This is my cop out. When I truly love a movie and I give it 5 stars, my change one thing is add a post credit sequence.
Okay.
So.
Add a post credit sequence, and or show me all the deleted scenes.
Like having them glued back together or something like that.
I'd be okay with that.
There you go. It's the biggest cop out I've ever come up with, but he looks like you need it right now. He looks stressed. Bryan, what is your change one thing?
I would have liked to have seen more like condescending, vapid friends around them. Like people either egging them on in all the wrong ways. Like it was a very shallow cast. So I could have seen maybe a little bit more fluff to it.
I that would be good. And I'm going to go on a similar note of this is just asking for more. But when Ernest decides to run from them when he decides not to take the potion, I like the idea that there are maybe those immortals or more immortals, or Tom, Dick, and Harry, as like her henchmen were called, which was funny in its own right, chasing after him, and a little more like I'd like a few zany rooms in this mansion, something off the wall, like something only a wild like Hollywood celebrity type person would come into, like I don't know, like step into a room that's full of jelly beans on the floor or something like that, and then like, you know, there's somebody weird and the jelly beans like. It's like, hey, man, welcome to the jelly bean room.
The schnozberries taste like schnozberries.
I just think that there's an opportunity for something really off the wall to happen in Leslie's house. And I don't know. It's just one opportunity as this chase goes, because he gets chased by these dogs. And I want something more to happen to him before he gets on the roof. So. Well,
Fabio was there.
Was he?
Yeah. He was one of her men.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's not butter.
It's not.
It's margarine. Best quote of the movie, DJ.
You're a tragic, boozy, flaccid clown. That's it. Flaccid. Flaccid. Flaccid.
Tongue was hanging out just now. Let's go with Bryan.
Oh, for Christ's sake, lie quicker.
This is one where Helen is there and Madeline has come down and they have now seen each other, and you know Ernest is stuck there and like he's sitting there going like, oh no, like everything's coming together for Ernest, and it's the understatement of the century when he goes, boy, Helen, I think you should leave right away. I see a very bad situation developing. and then right 2 seconds later, Madeline walks in and says, you brought this on yourself, and like shoots the hole through her. And probably my runner-up quote comes 2 seconds later when he's like, she's dead! And she goes, really? She is? Oh, these are the moments that make life worth living.
I love that one.
So it's kind of a pairing, all done in the same scene. But so that is my favorite quote of the movie. We've come around. Time to give this movie a rating on a 5-star scale. DJ, what do you give Death Becomes Her?
I have to give it a 5 because I used my little cop-out card when I couldn't choose. So
it's hard.
It's going to be a 5.
It's hard when you can't change anything. Bryan, what do you rate this movie on a 5-star scale?
I'll go with solid 4. I could definitely see it growing on me. But yeah, you know, on rewatch, I'll give it a solid 4.
My first watch, I was where you are, Bryan, but then I enjoyed it more the second time. And so now I'm up to a 4.5. And the fact that I can enjoy sitting here talking as much as I am, laughing and smiling as much as I am, I see the room. Like I said, this is a movie I would like to own, and there's potential to grow even more as the subtleties come out. But my current ranking is a 4.5. I really enjoyed this. Bryan, you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
Let's do it.
Next time, we're going back to the 80s You ready to get to another level of retro? We've been doing a lot of 90s movies. It's time to go back to the 80s.
Well, you tried to with this one.
I'm probably gonna leave that in now. Option 1, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids from 1989. A scientist father of 2 teenage kids accidentally shrinks his 2 and 2 other neighborhood teens to the size of insects. Now the teens must fight their diminutive dangers as their father searches for them. Option 2, Flash Gordon from 1980. A football player and his friends travel to the planet Mongo to find themselves fighting the tyranny of the Ming and the Merciless to save Earth. Option 3, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures from 1989. 2 seemingly dumb teens set off on a quest to prepare for the ultimate historical presentation with the help of a time machine.
I love Flash Gordon in such a campy way, but I'm going to go with Bill and Ted on this one just because that one's going to be way too much fun to talk about.
Excellent! All right. Well, thank you so much, DJ, for coming on the show. We really appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me back.
And Bryan, as always, it's been fun.
Oh, cheers, man. We had a great night.
Yep. And so, thank you, everybody, for listening. All the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you thought of Death Becomes Her. Subscribe, rate, and review to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a like on Facebook. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com if you want to talk to us further or if you want to be on the show. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Bryan?
Mass genocide is the most exhausting activity one can engage in, next to Soxer.